Welcome to Sugar Mama's Fire Play, the podcast where we ignite your financial independence, plan an early retirement for you, and help you build long-term, sustainable financial freedom. I am your host, financial planner, Canna Campbell, and today we're diving into one of my most requested topics. That is my personal FIRE strategy that I'm going to share with you right now. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that my goal isn't about building a big, fat, gross or net figure worth. Far from it. It's actually about creating a sustainable, growing passive income that gives me and my family the freedom that we desire, we're worthy of, and we're worth fighting for. And if you aren't familiar with what passive income is essentially money that you earn whilst you sleep at night. And examples of this are earning interest off a bank account, dividends from shares, which is my favorite form of passive income, or even rent from an investment property. So the more passive income we have in our lives, the more financial freedom. And the ultimate goal is to earn enough passive income that more than covers your living expenses and of course accounts for all those other things such as tax, superannuation, and of course our changing, evolving lifestyle needs. Now, when I say growing passive income, this component is really important. And I really want to make sure that we invest time making sure that you understand it so that you don't get caught out like other people have with their FIRE strategies. So when I say growing, that passive income must be able to keep up with inflation. If not, exceed it. Because at the end of the day, financial freedom isn't about hitting a number. It's about maintaining and improving your lifestyle over time by living off your passive income. So today, what I'm going to do is take you behind the scenes of exactly how I've built my passive income with my ultimate goal of being $200,000 per annum. I'm going to share with you exactly what I've invested in, the risks that I've taken, the challenges and setbacks and blocks even that I've faced. And I'm also going to share with you what's next on my FIRE journey. And of course, most importantly, I want you to walk away from this episode feeling inspired and ready to review your own FIRE strategy, looking at what you're doing, looking at what's working, what you can build upon for greater, more efficient success. Because at the end of the day, financial independence is never a one-size-fits-all approach. Now, on that note, I need to, of course, remind you that all of my content, in particular this episode, because I'm going to share with you what I'm doing, is never personal investment or strategic advice. This is purely for educational purposes only. Whenever you're wondering what you should be doing, can I strongly suggest you make an appointment to go and see a financial planner and ask them to design you a financial strategy through a statement of advice. All right, now that we've got that out of the way and it's nice and clear, let's get cooking with my FIRE strategy. Okay, first of all, I'd like to actually go straight to the strategy. So I've actually been on my FIRE strategy for the last 20 years, and my approach has never been set in stone. There have been bursts and spurts where I've smashed through my goals, and then there have been times where I've just plateaued, and there have even been times where I have had to press pause or even take a step back. My life has changed. My life has evolved, as everyone does. And I've had to adjust my strategy when life has needed it. I've had children. I've also had to spend large amounts of money doing IVF. I've moved homes. I've upgraded properties and built properties. I've also had setbacks in my life and financial challenges and had to take time out away from work for reasons that were out of my hands. So in saying this, my strategy has had to evolve with what's going on in my life, what I'm trying to juggle, and also what I have physically, mentally, and spiritually needed in my life. So I think it's really important for me to highlight this with you right now because your financial strategy, your FIRE strategy, should always be reviewed and improved regularly. What may have worked for you 5 years ago may no longer serve your goals today. And there may also be times in your life where you have to put the foot on the gas and work really hard and maybe make a few sacrifices, but there are also times where you are forced to slow down because of something that's happened in your life, intentional or unintentional, or you just feel like you need a slower pace. Your strategy has got to be able to evolve with you, pretty much like the waves of the ocean and learning how to surf. But at the end of the day, regardless of what's been going on in my life, I've always upheld the core principle, and that is about building long-term sustainable and growing passive income. Now, for me, that means that every investment that I personally make has got to pay me back a consistent income. It has also got to be able to provide me with a growing passive income. For example, knowing that that passive income is going to increase from, say, $20,000 a year to $21,000 a year or $22,000 a year. It's also got to have the potential for long-term capital growth. For example, buying a property for, say, $500,000, knowing that in a couple of years' time it's worth, say, $530,000. That's capital growth. And then, of course, it's got to be structured in a way that keeps me financially secure, even with the market's natural ups and downs that are a part of the game. So one thing that helps make my approach a little different, and some might say even riskier, is that I've always borrowed to invest. However, I have done this in a way that is measured, controlled, and always sustainable. And I say that in a very strict, stern voice because this is really important, because often when things backfire it's because they haven't done it in a sensible way when it comes to borrowing to invest. Now, how have I built my passive income? As I mentioned a second ago, I have borrowed to invest, but I've done it the right way. Borrowing to invest is most definitely a powerful strategy. It's one of the most powerful strategies, but it is only powerful when it is done the right way the first time, and it is done in a responsible, respectful way. So when I started borrowing to invest, I started with very small, modest amounts of money. And I always triple checked my cash flow in the event of a 3% interest rate rise. And of course, I kept my loans on a principal and interest repayment plan. So my debts were always coming down. On top of that, I did things like a reinvestment plan so that I was creating more and more equity between what my portfolio was worth and of course the debt, the loan, the initial loan, it was gradually coming down. So this really helped make sure that this investment strategy and my overall exposure was always safe and appropriate. And so my key rule for you right now is to understand that almost all of my loans are actually set at principal and interest. And the reason why I have done this, which isn't necessarily the smartest, savviest thing, because normally you prioritize paying off your deductible or non-deductible debt, and then you delay paying off the investment debt because of the tax deductions. But for me, this is what made me feel safe and secure. Now, this meant my overall debt is actually reducing over time, slowly and steadily. Instead of just covering the interest, or even worse, not covering the interest and obviously having those loans capitalized, I never wanted something that could very easily spin out of control. I will admit there is one investment loan I have which has actually been structured as an interest-only loan, but that has been structured in that way purely for strategic reasons only. And I will look at shifting that back to P&I when appropriate and smart. Now, my investment mix. When it comes to borrowing to invest, you want to make sure that the potential returns exceed the cost of borrowing, that is the interest. So what is exactly inside my investment portfolio when it comes to my own FIRE strategy? And what is exactly paying me this growing passive income stream? What are my sources? All right, I'm going to be really open and transparent with you. So I own a commercial property. Now this provides me a solid rental income with long-term lease. And I love a commercial property because they tend to come with leases that tend to stay, 3 to 5 years. So you don't have that high turnover risk that you could often have with residential investment property. I also have a residential investment property that I now have with Tom. And that obviously contributes to my passive income through the rent. Now, on top of this, I have a share portfolio, a diversified Australian share portfolio that is predominantly made up of industrial shares, particularly using listed investment companies and just a few ETFs. Now, that share portfolio is probably my favorite investment portfolio of the 3 key different asset classes, because the passive income that I receive from this investment portfolio comes with tax credits, which are called franking credits. So they really do help boost my passive income stream through the dividends. And I've shared in many other episodes, my share portfolio doesn't create headaches and nightmares and expensive holding costs like property does. And I say that about residential and commercial property as well. Now, each of these investments plays a key role in building my long-term growing financial independence. But as you will hear in this moment, I'm still making decisions about what is best for my long-term goals. Nothing is set in stone. I may make tweaks and changes depending on what is going on in my life, in Tom's life, and of course, what is best for our overall family. So this mix could change at any time. However, going forward, my ultimate goal or my priority is to try and build up the share portfolio above and beyond any of the property investment, both commercial and residential. So the challenges and what's next in store for me. So I have come really close to building that $200,000 per year passive income stream. And I feel a little bit embarrassed sharing this with you because I don't say it to boast, but I'm saying this to inspire you and also to be really transparent so that you can see that this is actually doable and achievable yourself. And I really hope that you take this to go, all right, if Canna can do it, I definitely can do it. Anyway, I must also explain that there is still debt attached to these assets, including my home loan. However, because I have structured all of these loans on principal and interest, at the very least, they are coming down naturally on their own accord. But for me, the challenge is making sure that this happens sooner rather than later because the repayment plan they're on is not fast enough. However, that then brings me back to my cash flow strategy and how I'm using my cash flow to tweak and change my strategy, which involves a combination of paying off our home loan as soon as possible, but also keeping a very close eye on making sure that our investments are coming down, as in the loans are attached to those investments are coming down, but it is cash flow positive. I do not want to be going into an early retirement with large amounts of investment debt. I won't go into retirement with any personal debt. I intend to have my home paid off before I officially retire or even semi-retire, but I do not want large amounts of investment debt for retirement because that won't give me the passive income that I need. There is no point building a $200,000 passive income stream if $200,000 needs to go directly towards loan repayments. That does not serve me in any way whatsoever. So for me, regularly reviewing that in strategy, keeping a very close eye on the overall debts, my home loan, the investment loans, and making sure that I am channeling any surplus cash to make sure that they come down as fast as possible is a really important strategy for me now, particularly as I am so close to hitting that $200,000 a year passive income figure. Now, the other challenge is life. My life naturally evolving. So as I mentioned, I have a mortgage, but I also have goals to renovate our home. So I've also got to try and fix that new, dynamic into the whole equation, the whole big picture. I've also got 3 children. And whilst my children are in public schools, eventually I would like to be able to afford for them to go to private schools if the budget allows. So again, these are the sorts of things, the dynamics or the curveballs or the options that I need to factor back into my FIRE strategy and see how it's going to impact my cash flow and of course my goals and the time frame in achieving those goals, that is the deadline. So I've got a lot of things in the air that I need to keep a close eye on. And I will admit, it is a balancing act, but by keeping my eye on everything on a regular basis, by reviewing it, I'm far more likely to achieve this goal and on time. Now, I will also share with you one potential change I'm considering, not now, but maybe further down the track, which will also throw a curveball into this, but it's definitely fixable, but there is an element of efficiency behind this and a lot of people will understand what I'm about to explain, and that is the consideration of maybe one day selling that investment property, that is the residential investment property, to accelerate paying off our home loan faster should we need to. However, to factor into this as my FIRE strategy, I also need to take into consideration the capital gains tax that I'm going to have to pay, or Tom and I will have to pay in selling, and of course the selling costs involved, paying the agent's commissions and all the legal fees and so forth. And most importantly, by selling an asset such as an investment property, it means we're going to be losing a chunk of that passive income that contributes towards that $200,000 a year. However, this is the upside of it. This would potentially save us hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest off our home loan because we'd be wiping off a serious chunk off our home loan, accelerating the time, and obviously the huge amounts of interest that we pay over the life of the loan. But what it would mean is we can then shift more towards a debt recycling strategy, which means what I would be doing is essentially back to basics, back to square one again to a certain degree in trying to replace that passive income with a new investment loan. Again, I would have to do the same thing, keeping it as principal and interest, making extra repayments to bring that loan down. But what that would potentially mean is we can replace our investments, that is the residential investment, with potentially a more efficient, more diversified investment portfolio through Australian shares, which for us align better with our long-term financial goals, particularly around tax-effective income streams. The next important part of my FIRE strategy is superannuation. So I actually haven't included superannuation into this $200,000 per annum passive income goal. For me, superannuation is a bonus. I won't be able to access it by the time I plan to retire, but it's not too far away when I do plan to retire. And of course, I'm always aware of the risk that the government may change the rules around when you can actually access super. They may put stricter restrictions in place as to how much you can access, or maybe making it a sliding scale as to when you can actually access it. But that doesn't bother me because I've created my own passive income stream that's completely out of super and away from anyone's control, rules, or regulations. But then I still have the bonus, the value, the efficiency of superannuation as well. Now, if you have been following me for a while, you'll know that I've always contributed to my superannuation as part of a bigger, wider FIRE strategy. And I plan on doing that continuously. I really respect super. I think it's extremely important. And for most of us, including myself, it will end up being one of my biggest asset classes that I will own above my family home. So it is actually really reassuring for me and also for Tom to know that we have an additional layer of financial security in the future through our superannuation accounts. So if you're listening to this and you're a FIRE member and you're really passionate about your financial strategy and building independence, can I strongly recommend, if you haven't done so already, is to go and look at your super and make sure you've set it up correctly to support your FIRE retirement goals. Now, what are the big lessons that I have learned along the way? This is what I really want to impart, and this is the gold and the nuggets that I want to impart with you right now. Your FIRE strategy is got to evolve with you. What works for you today isn't necessarily going to work next year or in 10 years' time. You have to be open to making changes, tweaking things, altering things, sometimes going aggressively, sometimes pulling back, or sometimes just making peace with plateauing. But you will know what is right for you at the time by reviewing it on a regular basis. The next thing is understanding the power of borrowing to invest. As I explained, borrowing to invest, when done the right way, is incredibly powerful and adds a huge level of efficiency in wealth creation, but only when done in a controlled, responsible, and respectful way. As Peter Thornhill always says, never borrow more than you can afford. It's a simple rule to follow that will often keep you in safe territory when it comes to building wealth and investing. The other thing you've got to remember from this, and me sharing with you what I'm doing, is it's about the cash flow at heart. Cash flow matters far more than your gross worth or your net worth. Having $1 million or multi-million dollar investment portfolio means nothing if it doesn't actually pay you anything. Ask yourself this question. Would you like to have a $10 million investment portfolio that pays you $10,000 a year? Or would you like to have a $1 million investment portfolio that pays you $50,000 a year? Which of those two portfolios is more efficient? Which of those two portfolios is going to give you the financial freedom that you crave? Of course, it's the $1 million one because it's paying you a passive income of $50,000 a year. So don't get sucked into, particularly on social media, where people are just focused about building their net worth or their gross worth. At the end of the day, it's passive income is what's going to give you that freedom. And it doesn't involve you ever having to sell anything down. The fourth key point to this particular episode is to remind you of the importance of growing passive income. Whatever passive income stream you choose to build, please make sure that it is growing. It should be keeping up with inflation as a minimum or exceeding inflation. Otherwise, you will watch your wealth erode away. It will be eaten up by inflation and you'll watch your financial freedom quickly evaporate. So if you're someone who has, say, a property portfolio, you might want to have a look at your rents. Have your rents been steadily increasing over time with the market value? Or, for example, have your dividends been exceeding and growing each year with growing passive income streams? Have a look at those key components. If they're not, you may want to get some advice from your financial planner as well as an accountant to look at what changes you need to make to your underlying investments so that you have that growing, sustainable financial freedom in your life through passive income that grows. And then finally, knowing your priorities. For me, it is a balancing act, balancing debt reduction, balancing making new investments, balancing replacing potential investments, balancing my family's needs, and of course, taking into consideration our lifestyle needs, goals, and dreams. So right now, most importantly, I want to make sure that this episode really inspires you to take a really good fresh look at your FIRE strategy. Asking yourself, where are your investments serving your long-term goals? Are your passive income streams growing? Are they exceeding inflation? What changes do I need to make if the answer is no? And am I making decisions that give me real financial freedom? If not, you need to make an appointment to go and get some personal financial advice. Now, as I get closer to hitting that magical $200,000 a year passive income and prioritizing turning that passive income into 100% cash flow positive income, I need to also take into consideration building up my sleep well at night strategy. So this is the final layer to my FIRE strategy. If you have read my book, Mindful Money, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But it is where I have 2 years worth of living expenses set aside, and this isn't emergency money, this is completely separate, but set aside in a savings account for natural market corrections and pullbacks, or if there's a situation where dividends are cut or paused. This will mean that I have 2 years worth of living expenses always set aside that I can use so I can leave my portfolio untouched to rebuild, replenish, which history shows takes typically 18 months, so that I am never forced into a situation where I need to sell any of my investments at a fire sale price. So there you have it, my FIRE strategy. It's been about building and buying long-term growing passive income streams through borrowed money. It's been about managing that overall debt in a wise, responsible way where I understand my risks, my limitations, my boundaries, and I keep my eye on the prize, which is the passive income stream. And ensuring that over time and as quickly as possible, I turn that entire portfolio into a 100% cash flow positive income stream, giving my family $200,000 a year to spend as we wish. And of course, have that added sleep well at night safety net in place at all times, with 2 years worth of living expenses set aside in cash. So now that I have pretty much opened up my bank accounts and my share portfolios and my investment portfolios and shared this with you, I really hope that this episode has given you some really great insight as to how I have built my passive income and how I continue to refine my strategy all the time. If this particular episode resonates with you, I would really love it if you could share this with a friend. Leave a review, send me a DM on Instagram at SugarMamaTV or even Canna Campbell Official, because I love hearing from you and I love hearing your feedback. And if you haven't already, please make sure you are following Sugar Mama's Fireplay so that you never miss an episode, because I publish a fresh episode every Monday morning, rain, hail or shine, at 5 a.m. So until next time, stay focused, stay inspired, and keep building the financial freedom that you deserve, are more than worthy of, and will fight for. And as I always like to say, keep that financial fire burning right within. This is Sugar Mama's Fireplay.